We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvav Amid Beis in Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 15b. On the previous summer, Rebbe Lazar asked Rav with regards to the carbon toda. Let's say one slaughters a carbon toda with the intention of eating a half a zayis of the animal and a half a zayis of the bread tomorrow outside of the proper time. Does the bread become pigul? And Rav answered on the previous summer that yes, in fact, the bread does become pigul. And on the previous summer, the Gemara asked, should that really be the case? Should the bread become pigul? We should make a kal v'chomer. If the mefagel, if the animal which generally causes pigul to the lechem, if that itself in this case does not become pigul, so then habol lefagel, then with regards to the lechem which is trying to make the animal pigul, which is not able to do that, if that's not able to affect that, so should the bread itself become pigul? It doesn't make sense that the bread should become pigul in this case based on the kal v'chomer. But the Gemara then continues and asks, can we really make such a kal v'chomer? But we have the following case. The Brisa says that there was an incident with an individual, Shezora Karmo Shel Chaveiro Smodar, that he planted in the vineyard of his friend. The vineyard of his friend already had grapes in it that had begun to bud. Uva Ma'aseh Lifnei Chachamim, and this incident came before the Chachamim, V'osru es hazroim, and he said that the zroim that were planted in this vineyard, they become osur as kilayim, v'hitiru es hagafanim, but the vines, they were going to be permitted. The basic idea over here is that the vines were already there, and there's a rule of ein adam osur davar she'eno shalo. A person cannot cause something that's not his to become osur, and so this individual went into the vineyard of his friend and he planted these zroim, and so the zroim are going to become forbidden, but not the gefanim. And so the Gemara says, but if you could say such a kal v'chomer v'yamai, why should we say that? Because lema kal v'chomer, who we should say the following kal v'chomer: uma ha'oser eino neser, if that which is causing it to become forbidden, it itself is not forbidden. So haboles, or something which is trying to make forbidden, v'lo aser, and it doesn't succeed in making forbidden, eino din shelo yisaser, isn't it logical to say that it should not be forbidden? If you can make such a kal v'chomer, we should make the same kal v'chomer in this case. Rashi explains, shezara mishalo, again, this individual planted from his own seeds, smodar kvar chantu ha'anavim, it means that the grapes, they were already budding, v'chein ha'yamaisa, this was the incident, v'yasru es hazroim, and just in this incident, they forbid the zroim, taimah mefarish l'kamon. The Gemara is going to explain the reason for this as it goes on. So ha'oser, what's the oser over here? Gefanim, that's the vines, ha'oser mes hazroim, they cause the seeds to become oser. So haboles, or that which is trying to make oser, meaning the zroim, it's trying to make the gefanim oser and it doesn't succeed, so how could they themselves become oser? If you can make such a kal v'chomer, we should make that kal v'chomer over here. But the Gemara continues, hachi hashta, what kind of comparison are you making? Hasam over there, canvas v'lof asra Torah. The oraisa of kilayim really only applies to canvas v'lof, which is hemp and loaf. Loaf is a kind of kitnius, says Rashi, a kind of legume. And shar zuroi midrabanan hu diasiri, other seeds are only asr on a drabanan level. And so hai da'avid isura, so the person that actually did the isur, kansur rabbanan, the rabbanan impose a fine. Hai lo avid isura, the one that did not do any isur, lo kansur rabbanan. There the rabbanan did not impose a fine. In other words, it's logical to say exactly what was said in that brisa, that the gefanim should be fine and the zroim will be asr. Aval hacha, but over here we do have that question, lema kal v'chomer, why don't we say this kal v'chomer? And Rashi explains again, loaf is mine kitnius, loaf is a kind of legume. Asra Torah bekerem, the oraisa, when it comes to kilei akerem, is again only canvas and loaf. Ein zaram kola sheyesh lem shoresh. The first explanation Rashi gives is that their seeds never finish because they have a root. Lishna achrin, another explanation, canvas v'loaf asra Torah. The reason why we know that's the oraisa, because it's written karmecha kilayim zroim hadomin lekerem. It's got to be seeds that are similar to a vineyard. Uvahanach tolan eshkolos kein anavim, and these have clusters similar to grapes. And the point of the Gemara and the answer is Baal HaKerem lo avedi surah. The Baal HaKerem, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do an isser. He didn't commit an isser. And so therefore, again, his gefanim, the rabbanan didn't make a knas. They're not going to be asr, but the seeds are going to be asr. But over here, we still really do have our question on Rav's answer, that why don't we say that kal v'chomer? And the Gemara continues with the exact same Gemara, but now not with regards to the carbon toda, but with regards to the shtei halechem. V'ika demasni lo hakavasim. There are those who learn this entire discussion by the kavasim, which are the lambs on Shavuos. Again, that's the lambs by the shtei halechem. And the question goes as follows. Again, the exact same Gemara. Boy minei Rebbe Lazar me Rav. Rebbe Lazar asked Rav the following question: Hashochet as hakavasim, one who slaughters the lambs, lechol kezayis mehenu milachmon, to eat a kezayis, again combined from the animals and the bread, to tomorrow outside the proper time. Mahu lif gule, what's the halacha? Mahu, what's the halacha in terms of pigul? Lif gule kevasim lo kami boili. It's not a question about the lambs becoming pigul, because hashta kulo milechem lo mefagli. We say that the halacha is even if the entire intention was with the bread, we say that the kevasim don't become pigul. Mehenu milachman mi boy. So if it's just it's a combination, a half a zayis from this and a half a zayis from the bread, half a zayis from the animal, half a zayis from the bread, do we even need to ask that question? Of course, the animal is not going to be pigul. Ki kami boili lifgule lechem. The only question is, does the lechem become pigul? Mi mitztarafi kevasim lifgule lechem olo. Do we combine the lambs and say that the bread becomes pigul or not? Amar Lei said back to him, af bazu, even in this case, halechem mefugol, v'hakvasim einan mefugolin. The bread is pigul, the lambs are not pigul. V'amayin, so the Gemara asked the same question, why should we say that? Lema kal v'chomer, we should say a kal v'chomer that the lechem is not pigul. Umaha mefagel einu mespagel, if what's creating the pigul itself doesn't become pigul, the animal's not pigul. Habol lefagel, so the lechem, which is trying to make pigul of the animal, v'lo pigul, and doesn't succeed at that. Eino din shelo yispagel, certainly the bread, should not be pigul. And the Gemara asks the same question as above. Umi amrinan kal v'chomer ki agavna. Do we really say such a kal v'chomer? V'atanya, again, we learned in a brayso, ma'aseh b'echad shezara karma shel chaver smother. There was an incident. A person planted. There was a vineyard of his friend, and again, it had budding grapes. And again, the same question. If you're going to say that kal v'chomer, v'amai, why? Lema kal v'chomer. We should say a kal v'chomer. Maha osar eino neser. If what is causing that to be forbidden, it itself is not forbidden. So habal lesser, that which is trying to cause something to become forbidden, v'lo asar, doesn't succeed at causing it to be forbidden. Eino din shelo yisaser. Isn't it logical that it should not be forbidden? And the Gemara then answered, Hachi hashta, what kind of comparison are you making? Hasam kanvas v'lof asr Torah. There, hemp and loaf is a doraisa, but shar zroim midrabanan hu diasiri. Other zroim, other seeds are only asr on a drabanan level. Hi David isura kansur rabbanan. Again, the individual who committed the isur, the rabbanan impose a fine on him. The law of isura lo kansur rabbanan. The one that didn't commit an isur, the rabbanan do not impose a fine. Aval hacha leima kal v'chomer. But here it makes sense that we should say the kal v'chomer, and we should question this answer with the kal v'chomer. Now we had two of the exact same discussions, again, one by the karban toda and one by the kvasim, the lambs. And so the Gemara notes, man demasni la toda, the one that learns this discussion by karban toda, kol sheken kvasim, you can certainly say it by the lambs. Man demasni la kvasim, and the one who learns it by the lambs, so there we can say kvasim hu dehuzkuku zela zela tnufa. By the lambs, it makes sense to combine intentions because they're also combined for the waving process. This logic was mentioned earlier. Avol toda, by the karban toda, the lohuzkuka zela zeh betnufa, where they're not waved together, there's less reason to say that we should combine intentions. So there, no, we wouldn't learn this discussion again because there's less reason to say that we would combine those intentions. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Rebbe Elazar mei Rav. Rebbe Elazar asked Rav the following question: Hashochet es hakeves, one who slaughters a lamb, lechol kezayis mechaveiro lamacher, to eat a kezayis from its friend the next day. Mahu, what's the halach? And the question is, what exactly is the intention over here? Chaveiro keves mashma. Does the word chaveiro here mean the other lamb? Again, there are two lambs on Shavuos. Velo mefagel, in which case it's not pigul. O dilmar, maybe lechem mashma. Maybe chaveiro means that he's intending on eating the bread tomorrow. And in that situation, we actually say that the bread does become pigul. What is the intention over here? Is the bread pigul or not? Amar Lei said to Tani Su, we learn the answer to this in a Mishnah coming up. Shachat echad min hakvasim lechol mimenu lemachar. If he slaughtered one of the lambs to eat from it tomorrow, hu pigul v'chavero kasher. So that lamb is pigul, the other one is kasher. Lechol mechavero lemachar. But if it was with the intention of eating from the other lamb the next day, shneim ksherim, then they're both kasher. And Alma, you see clearly from this Mishnah, Chavero Keves Mashma, the word Chavero is referring to the other lamb, it's not referring to the bread. The Gemara says it's not necessarily a proof from this Mishnah. Dilma de Parish, maybe the Mishnah means where he was explicit, and he said, V'yomer, he said, Chavero Keves, he said, its friend the other lamb, and so therefore there would not necessarily be a proof to the language of Chavero from the upcoming Mishnah. And Rashi explains, Boy Rabbi Abba Zuti me Chavero v'lo Pirish Keves. Again, he doesn't explain, he says Chavero, but he doesn't say Keves, it's not clear what he's referring to. The reason why it's not pigul when he has intention on the other keves is explained at the end of the Mishnah. If one were to slaughter one of the lambs to eat from the other one tomorrow, shnehem ksherim, they're both kosher. The general rule is one matir cannot make another matir pigul. In this case, both lambs are considered matir and they are permitters. Maybe chavero means the bread, and then the lechem lechem would in fact become pigul. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, HaZevach mefagel es hanesachim mishakitsho bekli. The zevach, the slaughtered carbon, can make the nesachim, the libations, pigul from when they are sanctified in the vessel. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Hanesachim einon mefaglim es hazevach, but the libations, they cannot cause the animal to become pigul. And the Mishnah continues, Ketzad, how so? Hashochet es hazevach, one who slaughters the animal, lechol mimenu lemachar, to eat from the animal tomorrow outside the proper time, that's an intention of pigul. So who unesachav mifugolin, the animal and the libations will be pigul. But lahakriv nesachav lemachar, if his intention is to offer the nesachim tomorrow, to offer the nesachim outside the proper time, then hanesachim mifugolin, then the libations are pigul, hazevach einu mifugol, but the animal is not going to be pigul. And Rashi explains, mefagel es hanesachim causes the libations to be pigul, shahashosa mehem, that one who now drinks from them, chayiv kares, is going to be chayiv kares, mishum pigul, because of pigul, shemishakitsho bekli, because once they're sanctified in a vessel, shuv ein lahen pidyon, they can no longer be redeemed, they're not redeemable, uktushasam kedusha, and they're sanctified, and so therefore again, pigul is now relevant to the nesachim, and there can be liability because of pigul. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Braisa, nitzchei behema, when it comes to the libations that accompany an animal, chayav and alein mishum pigul, there can be liability of pigul. Mipnei shedam hazevach matir and lekarev, because the blood of the carbon is actually the permitter that allows the nesachim, the libations, to be offered on the mizbeach. And in such a situation, pigul is relevant. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Amru lo le Rabbi Meir, they said to Rabbi Meir, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Meir, v'alo adam mevi zivcho hayom, unesachav ad yod yomim, a person can bring the animal today and the libations can be brought 10 days from now. And so therefore they're not really connected. Amar leheni said back to them, afani lo amarti, I only said my halacha, ella beboinim hazevach, only if they're coming together with the animal. Amru le, they said back to him, Amru lo, they said back to him, efsher l'shanoso lezevach acher, it's not true, because you can always switch it to another animal carbon. It's not connected to the carbon. And Amar Rav, and Rava says, Kasav Rabbi Meir holds, Hukvu b'shchita, that with the slaughtering of the animal, they are fixed to this particular animal, Kilach metoda, just like we find by the bread that accompanies the carbon toda. And Rashi explains, Shadam hazevach matir and likarev, the blood of the animal is what permits the libation to be offered on the mizbeach, v'havedavar sheyesh lo matir on the mizbeach, therefore the libations are considered something that it has a matir to the mizbeach, something permits it to be brought on the mizbeach, that permits this wine, these libations, to be brought in the mizbeach, and therefore v'noig behen pigul, therefore the rules of pigul apply to the wine, to the libations. T'chol davar sheyesh lo matir, because anytime something has a matir to the mizbeach, yesh bo pigul, the halacha pigul is relevant. But Meseches Yuma beperakot siulo, this is found in Meseches Yuma. But then the argument was made, unesachim mikan v'ad yod yomim, when it comes to the nesachim, so that really can be brought, you have 10 days, it can be brought much later is the point. Diamar mar lekamon, the master said later, minchasam v'niskeim afilu lemachar, it says minchasam v'niskeim that accompany the animals, and that can even be tomorrow, it doesn't need to be brought the same day, that's the point. Al malav mizvicha ninu, you see that it's not really part of the zvicha, it really isn't connected to the carbon. And Rabbi Meir responded, Afani lo amarti, even I said my halacha, I only said my halacha, in pigel bezevach, that if a person had this intention by the animal, sheyu anesachim sheyavi l'sof yud yamim mefugalim, where we're going to say that the nesachim that are going to be brought, sheyavi l'sof yud yamim, that will be brought after 10 days are going to be pigel, ella beboy mimazevach, that's only if they're coming together with the animal carbon. Amrulo, they said back to him, after l'shanoso, l'zevach acher, but you could always switch it to another animal. Hilgach lo mifkali, therefore they should not become pigel. And Rava said that Rabbi Meir holds b'shchita, no, once the animal is slaughtered, deheich hukvu l'zevach zeh, that they are affixed, they are attached to this animal. Ve'ein rashayin l'shanosam la'acher, you can't switch it to something else, and that's the root of the machlokus between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabbanan, the sages taught in the Braisa, a very similar halacha by the oil of the mitzorah, that's part of the purification process of the mitzorah. One who has leprosy, the oil is applied to his thumb and to his big toe. Log shemen shal mitzorah, the log of oil of the mitzorah, chayovin olav mishum pigul, there can be liability for pigul, for the same reason, mimnei shadam osham matir lebahonos, because it's the blood of the carbon osham that permits it, that now it's applied to the thumb and the big toe. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. Again, the same discussion. Lashon Amru Lo Rabbi Meir, the sages said to Rabbi Meir, Valo Adam Mevi Ashamo Hayom, a person can bring his Asham today. Velogo Mikan Ve'ad Yud Yomim, he can bring the Log Shemen from now until 10 days from now. He can bring it a different day altogether. It shouldn't really be connected. Amar Leni said to them, Afanilo Amarti Ela Bebo Imho Asham, I'm talking about where it comes together with this animal. Amru Lo, they said to him, Afshir Lashano, so Lasham Acher, but you can change it and use the oil for a different carbon Asham. It's not connected. Amar Rava says, Kasav Rabbi Meir holds, Hukvu Beshchita Kalach Metoda, with the slaughtering of the animal, it actually is fixed, it is connected to this animal, just like we find by the Lach Metoda. And Rashi explains, again, Kalach Metoda, Shashchita Kovaso, it's the slaughtering which fixes it, Kedamin and Ba'atoda Kedafrishas Le'el, like we said in Hatoda, like I explained earlier, and Log Shemin, the log of oil in Pigel, Beshchitas Asham, again, if he has an intention of Pigel, by the slaughtering of the Asham, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph.